Welcome back to Spill the TXC with me, your host, Amber. Today's episode is all about stalking, and as you know, when I have a personal story that I can relate, I'm always going to tell you. So I'm going to start today's episode with my own personal stalking story, which happened a few years ago, and to be honest, is extremely light compared to the other stories that I'm going to read you today. I mean, some of them are very scary, but I think it's about the message that it brings, because a stalker, especially if they let you know that they're stalking, and by let you know, I don't mean they outright tell you, hey, I'm stalking you, but they will show you in their action. And that feeling of being scared and unsafe is them having that control. They want to control your emotions. They want to have power over how you're feeling, and they do every time. Because there is nothing scarier than a human with bad intentions. So one of my jobs since I was 16 years old is to sing. And if you followed me over here from TikTok, you will know that I was in the first series of Towie in the girl band, and I've done a lot of singing things over the years, had some amazing experiences. But this particular day or night, I was singing in a venue. And I did, as I always did, put my cards, my singing business cards on every table to promote myself in case anybody wanted to book me. I did it every gig. My mistake was having my personal phone number on the card. And that was a big mistake and actually really, really stupid on my part. I look back now and I can't actually believe that I did that. It is so incredibly stupid to put my personal number on a business card that I just hand out willy-nilly. So that was my first mistake, and that was definitely a lesson learnt. So I finished the gig, everything went fine, people were up dancing, I was in dancing with the crowd, didn't notice anybody weird. Nobody was kind of, touching me weird or hanging around me weird, just nothing unusual, no red flags going off. I go home, I go to bed, I wake up the next morning to a message that actually arrived 3 o'clock that morning. Now, I'm going to try and remember this as accurately as I could. So the very first message I got was from a lady. She said her name was Karen, and she told me she was at the gig the night before, or, a few hours before when she actually sent the message, and she wanted to thank me for a really good night. So I instantly replied, because when I get a message from somebody who's picked up my business card, it's normally because they're booking me for a gig. So I think, brilliant, I'm getting a gig out of this. So I instantly reply and I'm like, hi Karen, thank you so much. Had a really good time too. Can't wait to go back and sing for you all at the place that I was singing at. And she comes back, and I'm expecting her to ask for my prices, for, my repertoire list, all of this. But it wasn't. It was just general chit-chat, which I was entertaining because I thought at the end of this, I'm going to get a gig. So I was entertaining it for about 2 days, which is a long time to be entertaining a chat that you think you're getting work out of. And don't get me wrong, it wasn't instant messaging back every time. I mean, she would, but there would be hours between my messaging back. I'm terrible on the phone as it is. So there were, quite a few hours between my messaging her back. And then it started to just get a little bit odd. And I don't think necessarily a red flag was going off at this point, but I was starting to feel uncomfortable, I guess. So the first message that seemed off was her saying, I really loved your leather look trousers last night. So I said, thank you. I didn't know what to say, but I was still entertaining it, thinking I was getting a gig. So I said, thank you. And then she said, do you mind me asking what kind of underwear you have to wear with them? So I went back and I said, I think that's inappropriate. And I think at this point I thought, I'm not getting a gig out of this. So then I was, slightly more harsh with what I was saying because it was uncomfortable. So she then came back with, is it Frenchies or a thong? After I'd already said, that's inappropriate. That's not acceptable. I can't remember, something like that. She come back with, was it Frenchies or a thong? So I stopped answering at that point. For the next 6 months, I would get phone calls and messages every day, every single day, but they were between a certain time slot. And I can't remember what the exact time slot was, but it was sometime in the afternoon. I want to say it ended. I worked in an office at the time during the week, and it always ended when I finished work. So that's when the phone would go off. And I know that because some of my colleagues persuaded me to call it one day. So I would always get these messages. I did say phone calls. I didn't mean to say phone calls. I was the one who made the phone calls. I didn't get any phone calls from the number. Not yet. It was just messages. So messages every day, always talking about Frenchies or thongs, always questioning what I was wearing that night, what I'm wearing that particular day. It was scary. It was really scary. I went to the police about it. I really don't want to miss any information out, so I'm probably going to be jumping back and forth. But I went to the police about it because I was genuinely scared. I would not have been hard to track down. The place that I sang at was in my hometown. They had my number. I had social media where I just would have been very, very easy to track down if somebody wanted to. And that scared me. And I was very aware of that. So I went to the police and I showed them the messages. I told them what was going on. We were about 4 months in at this point. And the only advice that the police could give me was to block the number because they hadn't come and done anything face to face. They hadn't threatened me over message. Although I felt like how constant it was and how many I was getting, I felt like that in itself was a threat, but the police didn't see it like that. So, yeah, the only advice that I got given was to block the number. That was the only thing that could be done. And I didn't do that because that scared me a lot more, not knowing what they wanted to say rather than knowing what they wanted to say. And I just had this image of me, walking down the street and then messaging saying, I can see you. And I don't get that message because I've blocked them. And I don't know that they can see me. Whereas if I don't block them and I get that message, I'm getting in the car and I'm going home. I'm calling somebody. I'm getting myself to safety. I was that scared that I didn't want to block them because I think it was the fear of the unknown was scarier. Not knowing what they were saying to me was scarier. So I didn't block. And every day I would get these messages, always saying the same thing. My colleagues were on at me to call this number, and I resisted for so long because I was scared. And then one day, someone was like, let's do it from the office phone, like 141, we'll withhold the number, let's just call it. So we tried. And as soon as we tried, the call got rejected. And then it almost became addictive. I needed to hear this woman's voice. I'd spoken to the place that I sang as well, and I'd told them about this woman. I only knew her first name. I did not know what she looked like. So I told them her name. I told them what she had been saying. I told them what I knew. And they had no regulars called Karen, just in general. So she wasn't somebody who frequented the place a lot. So she would have been somebody who just come now and then, or maybe it was their first time. They didn't have cameras inside either. No cameras. They had cameras outside, but I mean, I don't know who I'm looking for. So there was just no point. So as I say, it then starts to become addictive. This calling, this phone, trying to get through. I just needed to hear the voice behind the messages. So every time I got a message, we would withhold our number and call from the office phone. And every time, I mean, the person knew it was me because they was rejecting the call every time. And, people that I was working with were throwing suggestions around, saying maybe this is a burner phone. If you're the only one that they're messaging from this number, then they know that it's you calling, which obviously was extremely scary to hear that. Then one day, I do get that dreaded message, the one that I wouldn't have seen if I blocked them. I got the message that said, I can see you. And out of desperation, hoping to God that they would believe me, thinking that they probably wouldn't, but I needed to try something, I messaged back. This is something I hadn't done for 6 months. I messaged back and I said, the police are tracking your phone. See you soon. I didn't want them to think I was scared. And that was it. I never received another text from that number. And I wish I could say that's where my story ended, but it's not. 4 months after that, 4 months of hearing absolutely nothing, feeling like I've won. I've got my life back. Like I don't need to be scared anymore. 4 months. And then I'm sitting in the gym with my mum and we're getting a cup of tea and my phone rings. I don't recognise the number, but that's quite normal for me. As I say, I'm getting bookings and gigs, so I'm answering calls to any old number on my personal private phone like an absolute knob. So my phone rings, I answer it, and I get this real bolshy, boisterous voice talking to me, and he's like, "Hi Amber, my name's Tony." Doesn't ask me, "Oh, am I speaking to A?" Just instantly knows that he's talking to the right person. "My name's Tony, I'm doing a bikini calendar of all the ex-Towie girls." So the year before was when I was in Towie. So for all the ex-Towie girls, this guy wants to put together a bikini calendar. And as he's saying this to me, I'm quite fresh out of Towie at the time. So I know what's going on with the cast. And I know that the current Towie calendar isn't doing very well. So why on earth would a Towie calendar of the ex-cast do good if the current cast isn't doing well? It makes no sense. So I'm listening to him and my senses are tingling. I knew something was wrong, I just didn't know what. Until he said to me, bear in mind, I never heard Karen's voice. You know, Karen who was messaging, I never heard her voice. So this Tony then says to me, and I'm just listening, I'm just taking it in with the occasional He then says, you know, I want to fly you to this exotic destination. I want to take pictures of you on the beach, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, right. I'm not saying no at the moment, but in my head, alarm bells. I know that I'm not doing this and I know that this isn't real, but I can't figure out what this is. And then he says to me on the phone, I've just got one question. What would you prefer to wear? Frenchies or a thong? My heart is beating really fast. This happened quite a few years ago, but it still makes me feel a certain way even to just think about it. I don't like to think about it. I push it to the back of my mind because, like I say, it is a lot lighter than these other stories I'm going to read you. But for me, that was enough. That was scary enough. And I heard that and I froze. My body went cold. All the hairs stood on end. Like it was just that realization of, you know, I knew I was speaking over text or receiving text from a strange, weird, scary person. But I thought it was a woman. And it wasn't. It was a man the whole time. So I put the phone down. And then I sent the person a message. And I said, Tony, Karen, whatever the fuck you want to call yourself, the police have this number now. Never contact me again. And they didn't. They didn't ever contact me again. But the aftermath, expecting to hear something for almost a year after, honestly, it's torture. It is like torture, thinking that they're still watching, they're still waiting, you're still going to receive a message or a phone call, or they're going to try in some different way to contact you. But thank God, touch wood, it was many years ago now, I haven't heard anything. I, 32 female, and my husband, 33 male, have been arguing a lot recently over my old stalker. For some background, back in college I was 24. I dated a guy, let's call him Fred, for around 2 months. Fred was interesting to say the least. To save time, he had several red flags once we started dating, so I dumped him. Fred acted like he couldn't care less, so I thought that was that. And then a few months go by, and I start seeing Fred everywhere. I see him at the grocery store I go to, at my now place, my favourite restaurants, everywhere. I thought it was just weird coincidences, so I left it at that. But a year after our breakup, he starts messaging me, telling me he was the happiest with me and that he misses me so much. I called BS and blocked him. But then things escalated. Fred changed numbers every time I blocked him, made a new social media account, and I started to see his car everywhere. I tried getting a restraining order against Fred, but since he hadn't done anything to me, they couldn't do anything. Isn't that crazy that you have to actually wait for somebody to put their hands on you before the police will do anything? And just a little side story, actually. I wasn't going to do this, and I hate when somebody is telling a story and then stops to tell another story in the middle, but I'm going to do exactly that. Really, really quickly, I was followed, and I have spoken about this on TikTok, so you may have seen it on there, but I was followed when my baby was 4 months old, strapped to my chest. I was followed by a man with a knife, and I called the police. I was running away from this man. I hid in a bush with my baby, and I called the police. I actually called the police after the event, after I'd managed to get back home. Um, and the police said to me, there's nothing we can do as he hasn't touched you, but if he does, call us back. What do you mean if he does? He has a knife. If he touches me, I'm pretty sure I'm not going to be able to call you. Anyway, later turned out he had followed multiple people home, multiple women home. Luckily, he didn't get in anybody's home. But imagine if he had. And the police said they couldn't do anything unless he touched. So I tried to get a restraining order against Fred. But since he hadn't done anything to me, they couldn't do anything. A few months later, I was walking to my car at night, and coincidentally, Fred saw me walking alone and offered me a ride home. I said no. I had my own car and I kept walking. Fred proceeded to get out of his car and tried pushing me into his car. I punched him and ran to my car. I drove away, and luckily he didn't follow. I tried again to get a restraining order, but it was basically his word against mine. They gave me a temporary restraining order, but that's it. I was terrified of even walking outside and deleted all my socials. Thankfully, a very close friend, let's call him Pete, he stepped in to defend me. Pete ended up threatening Fred, and I finally stopped hearing from Fred. I felt free and slowly got back into my normal life. Now to present day. I'm now married to my husband. I've graduated from college and I live alone with my husband. We moved to a nearby city and bought a house together. Sadly, a month ago, Pete died during his sleep and I was absolutely devastated. I've known Pete since I was in high school and he was my closest friend. To be honest, I'm still not over his death and sometimes I can't believe he's gone. But guess who heard about his death? That's right, Fred. He found out and now he's back. I received texts from Fred a few days after Pete died. I now see him everywhere and he's insisting we talk. I just walk away and ignore him. I've reported him but nothing has happened, so I deleted my socials again. Friends have been telling me that Fred has been asking around about me. He's asked if I've moved, what I'm doing lately, if I have any other social media accounts. I'm honestly terrified. So would I be. I've moved since I finished college, but somehow I still see him at my gym, my grocery store, the park, everywhere. It honestly makes me believe he never stopped watching me, and it's terrifying. I've told my husband about everything and he says I'm overreacting or just plain ignores my concerns and changes the subject. Oh, bring back Pete. Isn't it mad how her friend stuck up for her, had her back, made her safe? And her husband, which really is the one person who should be doing that, isn't. He's actually doing the opposite. So not only is she in this stalking situation again in her life, where she must be petrified and confused and lonely and not knowing what to do or where to turn to, but also her husband, the one who's supposed to make everything in her little world okay again, isn't hearing her. He's not validating her feelings. He's pushing her to the side. She's got nobody. I've argued that he doesn't care, and he argues back asking what do I expect him to do. He says that Fred doesn't know where we live and that we can just change gyms. My husband is telling me to just change my regular routine and stop going to certain places. He says it's no big deal and Fred is harmless. I'm like, Fred tried to force me into his car. How is that harmless? My husband has been distant ever since this started and I feel so alone. I don't want to tell my friends in fear they will tell Fred. I can't go to my family because I'm no contact with them, and of course, my husband couldn't care less. I need advice. What do I do? Am I crazy? Should I just change my gym and my routine like my husband says? Part of me wants to move completely, but another part is basically asking myself, why do I have to uproot my life and change everything just because of him? Can't he just leave me alone? It's been 10 years and I want to move on from this. Should I just talk to Fred hoping he'll finally leave me alone? I personally don't think it's ever safe to talk to a person like that because they're not a normal person. You can't reason with them. We do have a few updates from the original poster, so I'm going to read them out. The first update: my husband thinks I'm overreacting, and he says if anything happens that Fred will end up in jail. And I hate when he says that because what does it even mean? Do I have to end up in a ditch before I can finally be left alone? Update number 2. I've been changing my routine hoping I won't see him, and it's worked a bit but not entirely. I do have a protection pack and I carry a bat in my car just in case. Update number 3. Small update and some more information about my stalker situation. I'm still new to posting, so for the first part my post should be on my account. That doesn't matter. My friends don't talk to Fred, and they are aware of the situation. Fred has reached out to them randomly asking about me. They have reported and blocked him as well. Now for the update. Last night I decided to have a serious conversation with my husband one last time. I sat down with him and explained the whole situation again, told him how scared I've been and that he needs to take this seriously. I wanted to show him how terrified I was, how small I've been made to feel not just by Fred, but also him. How his lack of support/concern for my own safety is making me question our marriage. I asked if he'd even do anything if I was found in a ditch. He was silent the whole time whilst looking at the floor. We sat in silence for a few minutes before I got up to pack my things, and my husband proceeded to cry. He apologised and said he'd make this right. Why did it take something like that for him to realise how scared you are? He said he didn't want to overreact in fear of scaring me more, but when in reality it made me feel alone. My husband has been looking into Fred without my knowledge. Okay. And has found out where he works, lives, and even Fred's family contact information. He wants to gather more information about Fred before contacting a lawyer. I'm glad he's doing something behind the scenes. I still feel, and I understand his reasoning, he didn't want her to panic more, but in doing that, he left her so alone. Like she felt like she was battling this all by herself, when really he was behind the scenes doing things. He was a team with her, he just didn't let her know. Men make such silly decisions. You know, I don't want to be sexist, but they really do. They don't think things through. That's why they need us. We're both taking a few days off work to get our ducks in a row. We're getting a lawyer and gathering evidence of Fred's harassment. We're also currently looking for a therapist so that we can both talk about this whole situation and other issues we have in our marriage. I think that's a great idea. I think everybody, whether you think you have problems or not, everybody needs a therapist. I also have voicemails Fred has left me and I officially think he's lost it. I have an Apple iPhone and you're able to see voicemails from blocked numbers. Some of the messages are him straight up talking gibberish, whilst others are as if he's having a conversation with me. He says things like, "Oh yeah, babe, I get off work late tonight, so it's a no-go," or "I'm off, so can you come pick me up right now?" "No." "Yeah." "I don't know. I can't do this anymore. There's a lot of fashion in my life." That's the conversation he's having with himself. There's lots of fashion in my life. If anyone knows what that means, please let me know. Like, surely that can't mean fashion as in clothes fashion. That has to have another meaning. Please comment and let me know what the hell that means. It sounds like he's having a conversation, but there's nobody else there, just him, and it's terrifying. My husband does feel bad and he's trying his best to console me. He's apologised repeatedly, good, for making me feel lonely and has been more supportive and open. Currently, he's looking through my car to check if there's anything that might be giving my location to Fred. I'll keep you all updated if we find anything or if anything else happens. Thank you for your advice and your support, and there is an update. I love an update. I wasn't sure if I should make an update, but decided to anyways, as to maybe get some more advice. After my husband didn't find anything in my car, I still felt like something was wrong, so I took people's advice and took my car to the mechanic. I told the mechanic about my situation and asked if he could take a look at my car, and to my horror, a couple of days later my mechanic found a small little cube that was placed hidden under my car. At first, I really wanted to believe that it was part of my car or something, but my mechanic explained that it wasn't, and that it was deliberately hidden. The cube is really small and magnetic. I called my lawyer right then and there and told him everything. I got pictures of the GPS and where it was placed. I thanked the mechanic and I drove to my lawyer's office. At this point, I was shaking and I wanted to cry. How long had the GPS been there? How long has Fred been following me without me knowing? Was he watching me at that moment? Is he going to add another one? I called my husband to meet me at the lawyer's office and I told him everything. At the office, I just wanted to disappear. I wanted to run away and not look back. I was terrified and I felt so violated, knowing I was being watched for who knows how long. With everything we had gathered, my lawyer was able to get a temporary restraining that same day. We are currently going through the process of getting a restraining order where I will have to go to court and see Fred again. My lawyer says the process can be long and draining, but it's something I do need to do for my own safety. I got a bit scared and had my husband's car also checked for anything. Thankfully, nothing was found in his car. I started feeling watched at home, so I had my whole house turned upside down looking for anything maybe Fred had placed. Again, thankfully, nothing was found. I've told neighbours about what we found and to keep an eye out for anyone suspicious. I've also started my safety training for handling a gun and shooting. I'm still trying to get my CCW, but it can be a long process. Thank you again for everybody who has given advice, and I'll keep you updated if Creepy Fred tries anything. And once again, it's the aftermath. It's the damage that they leave behind. This woman is so scared. He may never come back again. That temporary restraining order may be enough. Although with these kinds of people, you can never be too sure, which is why it leaves the last in effect. She will be scared in some way, on some level, for the rest of her life. Because when it happens once, you're so aware that it can happen again. I, 28 female, need to vent and get some advice because my life has turned into a living nightmare. My ex-husband, 30 male, and I divorced a little over a year ago. And let me tell you, the breakup was an absolute train wreck. Think betrayals, lies, toxic arguments, everything you could imagine. I thought once it was over, I could move on. But I was wrong. It started out innocent enough. He'd text me occasionally asking if I was okay or if we could talk. I was so hurt. I didn't want to seem cruel, so I'd respond. But then things started spiraling in a way that made me question my own sanity. It was subtle at first, 1 or 2 texts a week, and then I started seeing him everywhere. The coffee shop I go to every morning, the gym, even my favourite bookstore. Thought it was just coincidence, but I started running into him every time I left my house, and I began to feel watched. Then came the phone calls, dozens a day. I blocked his number, but he'd always find a way to reach me. New numbers, private calls, no matter what I did, he wouldn't stop. He started showing up places I went like he knew my every move. It wasn't just coincidence anymore. It was creepy. And it got worse. One day, I was walking home from a friend's house and I saw his car parked at the end of my block. He wasn't in it, but the fact that he was waiting for me, I couldn't breathe. I thought I was imagining things, but then it happened again a few nights later, and then again. Every time I left my apartment, he was there, watching. One night, I was out with friends, and when I came out of the restaurant, I saw him standing across the street, staring at me. I tried to ignore him, but when I got into my car, I noticed he was following me, driving slowly behind me the whole way home. I freaked out, pulled over and called a friend. I didn't want to go back to my apartment alone, so I stayed at a friend's place that night. After that, I went to the police. They said they couldn't do much without proof. But I filed for a restraining order, hoping that would end it. It didn't. Not even close. Now he shows up at my job, acting like he's just checking in on me. He's somehow gotten friendly with my co-workers, even asking them if I was doing okay and if I was feeling better after everything that happened. One of my co-workers told me he'd been asking questions about my schedule, when I'd be working, what time I'd be leaving. The worst part, he's been emailing me under fake names, pretending to be other people. And these emails, they're not just generic I miss you messages. He's sending me detailed, obsessive notes about my life. Things that he couldn't know unless he was watching me 24/7. And it doesn't stop there. Last week, I went grocery shopping and I looked up to see him standing at the end of the aisle, just watching me. When I tried to walk away, he followed me, but didn't say anything. It was like he was trying to trap me into talking to him. And when I snapped at him to leave me alone, he just smirked and said, "You can't run from me forever." I'm terrified. I've changed my routine. I've cancelled plans with friends. I'm always looking over my shoulder. I feel like my life is no longer mine. I feel like he is everywhere. I've tried to talk to a lawyer, but they say the laws on stalking are tricky, and I'm not sure if it's serious enough to get immediate help. I don't know what to do next, and I'm honestly scared he's going to escalate, maybe even do something drastic. Has anyone been through something like this? I just need to know how to make it stop before it gets worse. I can't keep living in fear. And once again, we're back to the fact that the police can't help us. Like, surely I don't know what needs to be done, because I am also aware that some people lie. You know, I've heard of some terrible lies that women in particular have told the police. So I don't know how we're supposed to go around this, but women do need more protection in situations like this. We do. How do you know if somebody's telling the truth? What can the police do? What laws can be changed to protect us while still wheedling out the liars so that an innocent man's life isn't ruined? You know, what can we do? If you've got any suggestions, put them in the comments, because I'm so interested to hear, especially other women's perspectives on it, especially if you've been through something similar. What would you change? What would you do to protect yourself in the future, to protect the next generation, our children? What can we change? My mum had a stalker who was an ex also, and I'm just going to touch on this story briefly. My mum got a restraining order on an ex who was hiding outside her house, hiding under cars, in the dead of night, looking through her kitchen window like this, sneaking around the side of the house to get close so that he could look through another window, thinking that if he moved along the sides of the houses and the neighbouring houses that the Ring doorbell wouldn't pick him up, but it did. But, you know, safety measures have been put into place, and we have done everything that needed to be done to make sure her safety is paramount. That sounds quite threatening. That sounds like I've gone and got him. I absolutely haven't. I don't think there's really much more I can say on that at the moment, but yeah, stalking is rife. People are fucking weird. The candles gutter and the circle tightens. Ice is in the air with a hush that frightens. Footsteps halt because something listens back. Names fade to echoes and the world turns black. Gather your breath and surrender your spark. The right has been spoken. TXC After Dark. I want to talk to you about Samantha Stites. In 2011, she was a student at Grand Valley State University in Michigan. She was very religious, so she attended Christian groups on campus, and that's where she first met Christopher Thomas. He was a man around 7 to 8 years older than her. He seemed harmless at first, and Samantha actually felt sorry for him. He seemed lonely. He didn't really seem like he has many friends, so she spoke to him when he spoke to her. She replied. She was polite. She was friendly and kind, and he took it the wrong way. He would start messaging her on social media. She was happy to accept him as a friend on social media because, like I say, he seemed completely harmless, and she just felt bad for him. But then it quickly went from messages to turning up, to being there in person. He would turn up at her place of work, at her friend's house, at parties she went to. He would turn up with flowers when her grandfather died. Samantha realised that this guy was becoming obsessed with her. By 2014, she knew this situation was very serious. This had now been going on for 3 years. She applied for and was granted a PPO, which is a personal protection order. In those 6 years, she felt safe. She wasn't keeping track of time because she felt like her old self again. She had got her normal life back. She had no idea the date that 6-year restraining order ended. But he did. One day when she turns up to sports practice, he's there. And so she goes home, she roots through all of her paperwork, and she finds the restraining order, and she sees that it ends that very day. He was waiting. He never forgot her. So then he started everything back up again. He joined the same gym as her, he would go to the same grocery store as her, the same music shop, the same bookstore. Everywhere she went, he was there. She would go to her friend's house and she'd come out and see his car on the corner. He'd come out of her own house in the morning to go to work and he would be there. Everywhere she went, he was there. In 2022, this was still going on. She applied for another restraining order because nothing had died down. If anything, he was doing it more. He was turning up more. He was being more crazy, more weird. So she applied for another restraining order, which got rejected. And do you want to know why the judge rejected her request for a new restraining order? Because he cited this situation as a complicated relationship. And then in October 2022, just a few months after she begged for that restraining order that got rejected, she was asleep in her bed one night and Christopher broke in. With his hands around her neck, he gagged her, he tied her up, and he took her, along with her paddleboard. He bundled her into her own car and started to drive. And this woman did something incredible. In the face of absolute sheer panic, she stayed calm and she concentrated. And she memorized every turn he took. Even though she was blindfolded, couldn't see anything, she memorized every turn he took, which actually got him caught later down the line. So he takes her to this secret bunker, which he's lined with panels to make it soundproof. He's got supplies like a makeshift bed, he's got water, food, bucket when she needs to go to the toilet. And that's where he told her that he had taken inspiration from the TV program You. And he did look into making a glass container at first, like the main character Joe did. You know, the main character who stalked, kidnapped, and then killed his victims? That main character. So he did look into making the glass container like Joe did, but he decided that wasn't logistically correct, so he made his own version. And that little bit of information is what kicked off Samantha's plan. Because you see, he was sharing with her, he was chatting with her, and as a social worker, she knew how to make people talk. So she did. She encouraged him to keep on chatting, keep on sharing, until he finally divulged that he was so scared of going to prison. But she convinced him that because she's a social worker, she is very good at keeping people's secrets. She would never do this to him, she would never out him like that. She values him, they have a friendship. Can you imagine the mental capability of this woman? She is keeping it together and she is playing the game whilst being tortured, raped, and thinking she's about to get murdered. I just remembered something very important to this story, which I should have said a little bit earlier. When she had the 6-year restraining order, she deleted all of her social media. She was so scared. But a few years in, she did start to get some of her social media back. She also started blogging about, her religious views, just religion in general, things that she wanted to talk about. And she made an online friend, a girl I think went by the name of Rachel. Don't quote me on that one though, but I think her name was Rachel. And they became very close. They never met in person, but they did become very close online, actually speaking every day at some points, and just talking about their shared love of their religion and all of the things that they believe. And it was just somebody to relate to in a really tough time in her life. Please remember that. So now that she had managed to convince this man that if he let her go, she wouldn't tell a single soul, which really is better for him, because if he's got an obsession with her, if he's stalking her, and this has been going on for 13 years now. She has been the obsession in his life for 13 years. He doesn't want her to go. He doesn't want to kill her, because then what's he going to do? It would be better for him to let her go, but he needs that reassurance that he's not going to get in trouble. So she makes him believe she's not going to tell anybody. So he offers a deal. He will let her go so long as she doesn't tell a soul. But first she has to sleep with him, or probably more accurately put, he needs to rape her again. And what choice does she have but to agree? So that's exactly what happened. She was allowed to leave after that. She was allowed to drive her car home, but she knew that he was still tracking her. So she left her car on her front drive. She walked over to her neighbour's house, and then she called a friend to come and pick her up. And they went straight to the hospital, where she got tested and got her evidence to prove that she was raped. She then went to the police, and she described in detail everything that happened, the inside of the bunker, and if you remember, she was taking note of the directions he was driving on the way there. She told them the directions, which ended up leading them right to where it was. What a fucking woman. Law enforcement located Thomas and arrested him within 36 hours. And in December 2023, he pleaded guilty to multiple charges: kidnapping, torture, and aggravated stalking. But as part of his plea agreement, he was never charged for rape. The police obviously had all of the information and all of the evidence that they needed. They had located his phone, his laptop, receipts from inside his home that were proof of the bunker that he had built, the things that he had bought. And the worst thing was the very day that her restraining order started, you know, the beginning of that 6-year one, that was the day he began to build the bunker. He was waiting, he was laying low for 6 years, probably still watching, but definitely waiting. And then when the police did a little bit more digging and they searched his laptop, they found an account that was subscribed to her blog under the name Rachel. He never really left. Samantha is now an advocate for stalking victims. She's highlighting the need for better legal protections and mental health awareness for both survivors and for people showing early signs of obsession, and I think that is so important. Rather than looking at some thought-provoking one-liners for the end of this episode, I really want to talk about what we can do for victims of stalking. And I think this lady whose story this belongs to, Samantha Stites. And I think Samantha Stites has touched on something really important here. She's not only advocating for stalking victims, but also for people showing early signs of obsessive behaviour. And just running with that for a second, what if we don't know what that looks like? Is there something that can be provided to parents, even if it's, like your kid goes to nursery, you get offered first aid courses that you can pay for and jump on, and it's like a group of parents doing a first aid course. Is there something like that that can be offered for signs to look out for different things, for the obsessive behavior, for addictive behavior even? Can that be seen in children? Because an obsession is an addiction, isn't it? In a way, you're addicted to the. How different are those words really? Because I think in some situations they can mean the exact same thing. But yeah, maybe there are classes we can offer to people to try and spot signs early on, because I know if I was offered that, I would definitely take it, because I wouldn't know what signs to look out for. Whether it's therapy or medication, or I don't know what it would be. But if you could help your child grow into a well-rounded adult that they may not have been, surely it has to start from there. It has to start from the childhood. It has to start with parents knowing what to look out for, knowing what to notice. And obviously that's not going to be the case with everybody, but maybe it would be a good start. If you do have any other suggestions, because I am really interested to know your thoughts on this one. How can we help stalking victims? How can we build them back up with the confidence that this isn't going to happen again, that they're not still being watched, that they're not still going to be contacted? And how do we prevent stalkers from becoming stalkers? Is it possible? Not with every case, but is it possible in some cases? What about the police? What can they do? What can they do or change to make sure that we're better protected? To make sure that when we call up fearing for our lives, that they don't have to give us the reply of, well, if they touch you, call back. There are so many holes when it comes to stalking. It's so complicated to gather the evidence to prove that somebody's been stalking, because stalkers are smart and they're sneaky and they know exactly what they're doing. So let me know your thoughts in the comments. If you enjoyed this episode, I have plenty more coming. I plan on doing this for a very long time now, so stick around. And if you do have anything to add, put it in the comments below. Love you, bye.